The cost of drinking and driving is undeniable. You might get a DUI or maybe serve some time. But when you take someone else's life, that can never be repaid. We sat down with Heather Geronemous, who opens up about the day a drunk driver took her father's life. First of all, everybody, I think, has heard about Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and MAD.
Absolutely.
And rightfully so, MAD. What do you do for the organization?
So locally, I volunteer, and as you mentioned, I chair Walk Like Mad and Mad-Fort Lauderdale, which I founded 9 years ago. And I also serve on the National Board of Directors as the vice chair. So I travel to Texas 4 times a year to strategize for the overall organization and how we can continue to save lives all across the country.
How do you feel we are today?
So, it's still too much. I mean, Mothers Against Drunk Driving started in 1980. At that time, we were losing 25,000 people to drunk drivers a year. Now we're losing somewhere between 10 and 11,000 people to drunk drivers every year, and over 300,000 people are being injured by drunk drivers. So we're making progress, but it's not nearly fast enough.
And unfortunately, you are very aware of that statistic. The message really hits home.
Absolutely.
To you. Would you mind sharing your personal story with your father?
Not at all. So, down here in Miami, a little bit more than 10 years ago, my father had given a speech at a medical conference dinner, as he often does, and it was a January night, and he was walking back to his hotel and crossing Brickell on foot with some of his colleagues, and he was struck and killed by a drunk driver who blew a red light at a high rate of speed, and my father landed in the middle of Brickell and died there, and the drunk driver continued to drive. He was eventually apprehended, but when he was arrested, he said that he hit a mailbox. I mean, for those of us that live here, we know there aren't even mailboxes on Brickell, and I haven't met him, and I'm sure I will at some point, but I would love to know if that was a lie, or he was actually that drunk that he thought that he had no idea.
And even if you think you hit a mailbox, you stop and look.
Right, absolutely.
Wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Lo and behold, that's common sense.
Yeah.
But there's no common sense here.
100%.
This is so senseless.
Yeah.
How did you find out?
So I found out I started to get phone calls from people who, at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night don't normally call me, all different members of my family, because it was a Saturday night. I was out doing my own thing. And, no one would tell me. And I remember screaming into the phone because there's so many people who were saying, you have to come to Miami. And I finally remember just screaming into the phone, is my father dead? And my stepsister had to answer me and tell me that he was in fact dead. And it was just terrible. And then the worst part, really, I shared with you before air, my grandmother, who's now 97 years old, it was my father's mother, and she survived him. And she always says it's the wrong order of things.
Of course.
So that's really the most terrible part.
A mother's not supposed to outlive their children, hence the acronym MAD.
Exactly.
How mad were you? Besides devastated. How mad were you?
So in the beginning, I was more almost confused and distraught. I was an adult, so I didn't go home with no dad. I just went home to where I lived. So it didn't hit home for a while. I was just kind of in a daze. But anger, despair, all of the things that you could think of, and that's where Mothers Against Drunk Driving really comes in and supports victims, because there's no reason. It's preventable, and there's a special set of circumstances, I think, that nobody can understand until it happens to them. They come with a death that didn't have to happen, and so that's where our victim support is so important to people like me and other people that are either injury survivors or people who experience death.
And Heather, I know after that horrific experience, you decided to turn it around and become an advocate.
Yes.
How did it help you cope with the loss of your dad?
So first, it's important to realize that Mothers Against Drunk Driving supported me in the year that it took for the person that killed my father to go to prison. And from everything from providing necessary services to helping me give a speech at the trial. The woman literally, Nancy, held my hand while I did it because I was shaking and crying. So it's really important to realize that all that happened. And then I turned around and I thought, Mad had a presence when I was growing up down here, and we just kind of had lost our footing. People seem to think that the issue is solved, and obviously by a personal experience I learned the issue is not solved. So I realized that I had to help, and I had to take a stand and do something for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, so we could talk about it before tragedy occurs, so people could learn about Mothers Against Drunk Driving like they will today, as opposed to coming to us because they've had a loss.
I saw you at a podium talking. What were you doing there, and how did it help you to just start sharing your story?
So in that photo, I was advocating in Tallahassee for harsher punishment for drunk drivers. In most states, there's ignition interlocks for first-time offenders, which would stop people from repeating the offense of drunk driving. And we don't have that yet. So there, I was in Tallahassee with lots of my colleagues from MAD, and we visited congressmen and senators, and we started the conversation, which we still have to finish.
You mentioned that this individual went to jail, but he got out?
Yep, he's been out for the last couple of years. It was extremely surreal. I actually did an interview with a news station right by where my father was killed the day that he was let out of prison. And I hope that if he sees this or someone that knows him sees this, that he's telling the story about what he did, not in a way that makes people feel bad for him, but in a way that makes people realize that it's not okay.
How long did he serve?
He was in for 6 years.
Okay, so before we move on, I'd like to, let's not get into the law aspect.
Yeah.
We could be here for hours of how mad that makes
Absolutely.
me. Let's go into
Sure.
Our phone number, our toll-free number. If you have a question or two, or if you'd like to share a story of a situation that you've been in with a drunk driver, 855-796-4475. I want to get into this special organization, MAD. It's just fantastic, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We have a clip to give you an overview of the importance of highlighting this issue. Take a look.
At MAD, we believe in zero. Zero fathers who aren't there for bedtime. Zero mothers who miss the first day of kindergarten. Zero sons and daughters who never come home. We believe in zero victims of drunk driving. Since MAD's founding, we've made great progress. Drunk driving fatalities declined by more than 50%. All 50 states raised the legal drinking age to 21 and made it illegal for adults to drive with a blood alcohol concentration at or above 0.08. And as of 2016, over half of the country is covered by all offender ignition interlock laws. This is all good news, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough because every year, drunk driving injures 290,000 people. It's not good enough because every year drunk driving takes 10,000 lives. It's not good enough because it isn't zero. But we know that we can get to zero, and it starts with you. When you work with MAD, you're part of the campaign to eliminate drunk driving. The campaign has 4 initiatives. 1, support more high-visibility law enforcement. If people think they'll be caught, they're less likely to drive after drinking. DUI checkpoints can reduce drunk driving deaths by 17% and are one of the strongest deterrents to drunk driving currently available to law enforcement. 2, ignition interlocks for all convicted drunk drivers. Ignition interlocks force offenders to provide a sober breath sample before operating their vehicles. This keeps drunk drivers off of the road and reduces repeat DUI offenses by 67%. If ignition interlocks were adopted nationwide, an estimated 1,000 additional lives could be saved each year. 3, advanced vehicle technology. This is the future of a world without drunk driving. The driver alcohol detection system for safety will use breath and/or touch sensors inside the vehicle to determine if a driver is over the BAC limit of 0.08 and keep the car from moving. Additionally, autonomous vehicle technologies have the potential to eliminate many types of roadway fatalities, including drunk driving. If universally adopted, no more victims will become a reality. 4, public support. Everyone has a responsibility to help eliminate drunk driving. Thanks to non-drinking designated drivers, taxis, public transportation, and ride-sharing apps, there's no excuse to drive drunk.
We really want to thank Heather for sharing her personal story, and we say it all the time, please don't drink and drive. Remember, you can hear more of her story and watch other moving videos from the Health Channel on our website, allhealthtv.com.